this is Sports with Dylan. We just got a blockbuster trade that we've been waiting for a couple of weeks now. Timo Meier, the star former first-round draft pick for the San Jose Sharks, has been traded to the New Jersey Devils, a team that has been surprisingly good this year. This was not just a trade involving Timo Meier. In fact, there were so many players involved and picks that I had to make a list, of which I have right here. The Devils received the superstar in Timo Meier, Timur Ibragimov, a former 6th-round draft pick for the San Jose Sharks, Scott Harrington, a solid defenseman, Santeri Hataka, another former 6th-round draft pick, and Zachary Emmond, another former 6th-round draft pick, and a 5th-round draft pick in 2024. The Sharks received a solid forward in Fabian Zetterlund, another solid forward in Andreas Johnson, a former 1st-round draft pick in 2020 in Shakir Mukhamadullin. I hope I pronounced that right, probably didn't. A former 2nd-round draft pick in Nikita Okotiuk. Again, probably didn't pronounce that right. A 2023 1st-round draft pick, a 2024 2nd-round draft pick, and a 2024 7th-round draft pick. This trade is massive. Absolutely massive. There were so many players involved, although it was still only 2 teams. Timo Meier has been on the trade block for a while now, because the Sharks are not a very good team, but Timo Meier has been a very, very good forward this year for the Sharks, which means it makes sense, especially given that he's an upcoming free agent, to trade him away and get as much as they can for him. And that is exactly what the Sharks did. Man! Oh man, did they get a huge haul here. It is outrageous, honestly, how much they got. I do think the Devils got ripped off a bit here, I've gotta say. I mean, just take a look at this. Sure, the Sharks gave away quite a few players, but 3 of them were former 6th-round draft picks, only one of which has actually touched NHL ice, and only in a couple of games he's barely played. And it's likely that none of those 3 guys will ever put up that much of an NHL career, because they're 6th-round draft picks. One of them isn't even playing in North America, so it's unlikely that the Devils really got anything in those 3 guys. Sure, Scott Harrington is a solid defenseman, and I think that's a good return for the Devils. But aside from that and Timo Meier, Devils didn't get much. Meanwhile, they lost 2 solid forwards in Fabian Zetterlund and Andreas Johnson, both of which I quite like. They're good depth pieces, and I think the Sharks got pretty lucky getting both of them, although I don't think they're superstars. They also got Shakir Mukhamadullin, again, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, who was a 1st-round draft pick just a mere 3 years ago. He has played a tiny bit in the NHL, although not that much, but he's still budding. He has plenty of potential and could easily become a superstar on the Sharks. So, in practice, you're more or less just giving away a 1st-round pick to the Sharks, although not of the Sharks' choice. Then they also gave out Nikita Okotiuk, who was a former 2nd-round pick. Same situation as Shakir Mukhamadullin, because neither of them have played that much on NHL ice, but both were drafted fairly recently and in an earlier round of the draft. So they basically gave them a 1st-round pick and a 2nd-round pick there. And then they gave them another 1st-round pick and 2nd-round pick. That seems like a lot, if you ask me, just for Timo Meier and Scott Harrington, really. So this trade clearly shows what direction the teams think they're going. The Devils are going all in. They're trading away everything for Timo Meier and Scott Harrington, 2 solid, proven players to improve their team. Meanwhile, the Sharks are trading away 2 solid, proven players who aren't going to be around when the Sharks are contending in exchange for a bunch of young guys and a couple of draft picks. If the Devils manage to make a deep run into the playoffs, then I think this could prove to be a sufficient return for Timo Meier. And don't get me wrong, I do think Timo Meier is going to improve this Devils team drastically, which is going to be hard because they are already really good this year. But all of this for Timo Meier, it just seems like so much. I think you could have gotten away with just the first round pick, the second round pick, and maybe, I don't know, someone like Fabian Zetterlund or Andreas Johnson. One of those two. I don't think it was necessary to trade away all those young guys as well. Or if you really want to contend, keep Zetterlund, keep Johnson, and trade away just Mukamadulin or something and a first round pick. That would be a solid return for Timo Meier. But the fact that they trade away all of this just seems a bit excessive. Timo Meier was not the only player that has been traded leading up to the trade deadline. We have about 5 more days until the trade deadline, but there have already been quite a few trades, such as Nino Niederreiter, the player who signed from the Hurricanes to the Predators this past offseason, has now been traded to the Winnipeg Jets. Niederreiter is a solid forward who is 30 and getting up there in age, and I believe is a pending free agent, so this trade makes sense. The Predators know they're not likely to make the playoffs this year, so they might as well get a second-round pick for a fine player who's likely not to return after the season anyways. And the Jets now got a new solid depth forward, so I quite like this trade. Next of all, you've got Evgeny Dadonov, the player who was traded in exchange for Shea Weber to the Montreal Canadiens this past offseason, has been traded to the Dallas Stars in exchange for Denis Gurievnov. This trade is fine, but I think the Canadiens could have pulled a bit more out of this. Especially given the fact that they're retaining 50% of Evgeny Dadonov's salary, because he is definitely overpaid. The Stars now gain a solid depth piece, but what do the Canadiens really gain? I mean, Gurievnov is fine, but he's not great. Dadonov isn't great, but Dadonov is at least solid. Dadonov is your second or third line player. But Gurievnov, I'm not even certain he will crack the Canadiens roster. I think he will. Probably a third or fourth line guy, but he's not that amazing. So I think the Canadiens could have pulled a bit more out of this one. Next of all, Ivan Barbashev, another player who helped the Blues win the Stanley Cup, has been traded to the Vegas Golden Knights and is now reunited with Alex Pietrangelo. This is a pretty solid trade all around. The Blues are clearly trying to get into rebuild mode. They've already traded away Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko. They're 2 top older players. So now they're just trading away a couple more guys that are getting up there in age. Barbashev is a solid player, and he's actually only 27. But he is still old enough that it doesn't merit keeping him for the Blues once they're done their rebuild. Meanwhile, Vegas has had quite a few injuries, so they could use a depth piece. In exchange, the St. Louis Blues received Zach Dean, who is a former first-round draft pick, and I think he could develop to be a solid player in the Blues system. We'll see, I cannot say for sure, but I think this is a pretty solid trade all around. Unlike this next trade, the Lightning received Tanner Jeannot from the Nashville Predators in exchange for Cal Foote, a 2025 first-round draft pick, a 2024 second-round draft pick, a 2023 third-round draft pick, a 2023 fourth-round draft pick, and a 2023 fifth-round draft pick. So I'm going to start this off with one question. Who the heck is Tanner Jeannot? Okay, sure, I've heard of him. I know that he's a solid player. I know that he can fight. But what has he really done for the Predators? The answer is nothing. He has not done that much to warrant this from The Predators. When I first saw the headline, Tanner Gianno trade for Cal Foote, I thought that was unfair for the Lightning, because Cal Foote is a solid defenseman and a former first-round draft pick who is still developing next to Victor Hedman. But they threw in a first-round pick and a second-round pick and a couple more later-round picks. What the heck were they thinking? This drives me nuts. Timo Meier I thought was an unfair trade. But this trade is just outrageous. What exactly are the Lightning gaining from getting Tanner Gianno? If you ask me, they're not gaining that much. Sure, they gain a bit of a fighter and a player that can serve as a fine third-line or fourth-line guy, but they don't have that much. Meanwhile, the Predators just got a first or second-line defenseman and a bunch of picks to completely rebuild this roster. I mean, what the heck were the Lightning thinking? Well, I for sure have to applaud the Predators, because they just sped up their retooling by quite a bit. They traded away a youngish player, but got in return an even younger player and a bunch of picks. This is perfect for them, meanwhile makes no sense from the Lightning's point of view. Anyways, I will be making quite a few videos in the next week leading up to the deadline, and I am sure we are going to get another couple huge blockbuster trades. But for now, thanks for watching.